Ross Tucker joining us on behalf of DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today. Use the promo code Patrick for a special offer when you sign up. Promo code Patrick only at DraftKings Sportsbook. And Ross Tucker set to join us. There he is. Oh, popped up on the screen. You scared me a little bit. It's like that scene in Animal House when the picture of Flounder shows up and they all go, ah! Ah! There's Ross.
Well, you know what, though, Dan? They got him in the fraternity anyway because his dad went there or whatever.
Legacy.
Kind of like me.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want me, DraftKings got me in today, so I'm in here anyway.
Yeah, Flounder's brother was a legacy. All right, let me start with the Steelers. Can you have a good loss if you're Pittsburgh, considering that you brought in Kenny Pickett to replace Mitchell Trubisky?
No. I mean, I think there are some losses that are better than others, but I would say no for the Steelers for a couple reasons, Dan. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record. You know, that organization just looks at things differently than a lot of others do. They never give up on a year. They never give up on a game. And I think it's great that they put Pickett in. He did provide a spark. But you're up 20-10 in the second half against the New York Jets, and you let Zach Wilson lead 2 70-plus yard touchdown drives. You're the Pittsburgh Steelers at home, and you're getting sliced and diced
but
by
good
Zach
in a
Wilson.
way that you've made the change to Kenny Pickett. Not that in your defense, that's inexcusable, that you allow the Jets to come back in Pittsburgh, but Kenny Pickett is maybe now your quarterback moving forward. Is that a good thing, even though it was in a loss?
Yeah, I would say it's a terrible loss, but that is the positive silver lining that Pickett did provide a spark in more ways than one. Yes.
All right. That's what I was trying to do. You know, you made it far more complicated. Help me understand John Harbaugh's logic here at the end of that game against Buffalo.
Yeah, I think he, at that point, did not have a ton of confidence in his defense's ability to prevent the Bills from getting a field goal and tying it and going to overtime. And I think he thought on the 2-yard line, I'm going to show some faith in Lamar because either we get a touchdown and then it greatly increases our chances to win the game, or it's incomplete pass or we don't score. The Bills have to go the length of the field. They're at the 2-yard line. I don't think when he did the calculation, and I've talked to these teams, Dan, I know you do too, they have all the win probability stuff, right? Like they know if the Bills get the ball at the 2, like they know all of the different win probability factors. I don't think they took into account Lamar throwing a pick and the Bills getting the ball at the 20. Because there's a big difference in terms of play calling and mindset when you sort of drive at the 2 versus the 20. Although, you know what, Dan? I mean, the Bills marched down and could have easily scored a touchdown anyway. I mean, they were able to get to the 1-yard line.
But why didn't the Ravens let him score? Why didn't they let him score to get the ball back then?
I think they were trying to. I think I think that might be why Marcus Peters was so fired up.
Wait a minute. They couldn't stop them the entire game, and then you tell them to let them score, and then they stop them.
I think I think the one play, when the guy ran to the 1-yard line, he went down, though. Like, the Bills figured it out. I think they were even trying to let him score there.
Yeah.
And it must have been Singletary. I don't think he was really trying to score. And obviously, the Bills very, very smartly knew we don't want to score a touchdown. We don't want to give the ball back. We can take the clock all the way down. It was perfect, Dan, because I had the Ravens plus 3.5. So the Bills get the win. The Ravens still cover. It was a beautiful ending to that football game.
All right, the Eagles went down but not out. Came back, bad weather, Trevor Lawrence with fumbles, but a little bit tougher game probably than Philadelphia, or we thought it might be. But you're comfortable with the Eagles? Are they the best team in the NFC right now?
I think they are, and I'm not sure there's a team in the NFL that has a better roster than them right now. It's really unbelievable. I mean, they go out in free agency and get Hassan Reddick. He has 2 strip sacks of Trevor Lawrence in the fourth quarter. I mean, exactly why Howie Roseman went out and got him as a free agent. The one thing they hadn't done so far this year, Dan, was really have to overcome adversity. How about a pick 6 from Hurts? How about down 14-0 in the first quarter to your former coach? All they did after that adversity was score the next 29 points to go up 29-14. Thoroughly impressed by this Eagles team. And they certainly handled the rain a lot better than Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he had 4 fumbles, Dan. 2 of them were unforced. I thought he had big hands. I don't know what happened to Trevor Lawrence with all the fumbles, but that was a very impressive win by the Eagles. I mean, they're doing that's 4 straight really impressive wins by the Eagles.
But if the Eagles went up against the Bills or went up against Kansas City or anybody else, who would you take in those matchups?
Well, I think those are I'd love to see the betting line at DraftKings for those games because I think those are pretty much push games right now. I'd love to see what the line would be. My guess is the Eagles would be slight underdogs because of Josh Allen, because of Patrick Mahomes, who were both ridiculous again yesterday. But the Eagles have an awfully good team. The question now is, how bad were the injuries they suffered? They lost 2 O-linemen yesterday. Slay only played 3 snaps. So the injuries might be getting them a little bit. But it's interesting, Dan, because that is the company that they're in right now. I mean, I think in my mind, the 3 teams in the AFC are the Ravens, Bills, and Chiefs. And I think the Eagles are kind of right up there with them in terms of teams that are looking like they have a legit chance to go to the Super Bowl.
Feels like the Rams played opening night, and we haven't really talked about the Rams since then. Feels like they're still formidable. Now you have the Niners game tonight. What do you expect out of this?
Yeah, it's a good point because they played a couple nondescript games Sunday afternoon. People haven't really been paying attention to them, but they've won a couple in a row. I love some of the stuff that Sean McVay is doing. He basically puts a wide receiver, Ben Skoranek, at fullback now in the last game. That was awesome. This is a gut check time for Kyle Shanahan. I mean, I know there's some people in San Francisco that think the Niners organization should potentially move on from him. They told me that on the radio last week. That really stunned me.
Really?
But they were pathetic against the Broncos. This is a Monday night game. You know the way it is, Dan. The primetime games are like 10 times as important in the court of public opinion. No Trent Williams. They need to play much, much better because if the Rams win, and I kind of like the Rams in this game tonight, there's going to start to be some interesting chatter in San Francisco around Kyle Shanahan.
Well, not quite sure what you have at quarterback here. I know it's Jimmy G, and yes, all he does is win. But bigger picture here. You know, the Niners went all in on Trey Lance, and it's sort of like Jimmy's still hanging around. It's like, all right, I don't have a date for the dance. I'll dance with you for a little while. I wonder if they have a quarterback as they move on, this entire season into next season.
It feels like there's a myriad of possibilities right now for them, right? Like Jimmy could play really well and they bring him back. Jimmy could play terrible and they move on and it's Trey Lance's job. I guess I feel like at this point, it almost would be hard to go into next year with only Trey Lance. It feels like they'd almost have to give themselves another option. And that might be the thing that helps Shanahan out the most, even if the Niners have a down year, is ownership probably wants to at least have 1 year where they can see what Kyle Shanahan does with the guy they traded up to get the number 3 overall pick to draft.
We're talking to Ross Tucker, joining us on behalf of DraftKings, host of Even Money betting podcast, game analyst for CBS, Westwood One, also the Eagles on the call for the Bengals and Ravens next Sunday night on Westwood One. I was wondering why the NFL doesn't allow a third quarterback on the sidelines so you don't have Saquon Barkley taking snaps. Can't you? What's the big deal if you have a practice squad quarterback who's on the sidelines in uniform and it's an emergency situation only? The only way he can get in is if the quarterback is injured.
Is that kind of like the goalie in hockey who sits up in the booth unless there's two goalies get injured, and then the guy's like a plumber or something, and he goes out on the field?
I don't know if he's a plumber, but yeah, you're right. But
I love that. I love when the emergency goalie is used. I do think the NFL should consider that. I guess the counter argument is, Dan, you're allowed to promote 2 guys from practice squad now. So you're allowed to have 55 guys on the active roster. You're allowed to dress more than you ever used to before. I think the NFL is really saying to people, hey, the onus is on you to have 3 quarterbacks dressing, like the Dolphins did, by the way, Thursday night. Last Thursday against the Bengals, they activated Skylar Thompson, the rookie from Kansas State, to make sure they had 3 quarterbacks eligible. So I like where your head's at, Dan. I think they probably should consider that. But if they don't, these teams need to think about it because, man, we had Bailey Zappi playing. You know, we've had some interesting quarterbacks out there. Saquon's taking direct snaps because you only have 2. That guy's 2 snaps away. Then you have Daniel Jones, who I think has a pretty bad ankle sprain out there. He can't really protect himself. That's probably not real good. Not a real good look for the league either.
Before I let you go, I'm curious about this with offense and defense. You played on the offensive line in the NFL. If you're the Lions offense and then you run into the Lions defense, let's say in the hallways or a meeting room, and does it get contentious? Because you're scoring, you're the highest scoring team in the NFC, and your defense is the worst defense scoring-wise in the NFC. So what happens when those 2 parties collide?
There can absolutely be tension, and I've experienced it. And unfortunately, it was because the offense stunk that I was a part of, and the defense was awesome. And you just get some side-eyed looks. You can tell they're getting frustrated. Some of the guys might start making comments. I've seen that a couple times. You know, there's not really another sport like it, right? Like, you know, I don't think do the baseball hitters get mad at the pitchers? I don't know. But, you know, basketball's continuous, hockey's continuous, soccer's they're all part of it. But that's what makes football so unique. Most of your meetings, you're not even together. Like there's defensive meetings, there's offensive meetings. You're almost separate teams. And yeah, the guys on defense, I remember in Buffalo, I think it was 2003, our defense was awesome. We were struggling on offense. Those guys were getting very angry. And, you know, I didn't really blame them. Like I'd be frustrated if I were those guys too. They're playing their you-know-what's off, and we can't put any points on the board. That's when it's really the coach's job and the leader's job to really try to keep the team together. And remember, listen, like, it's not offense versus defense. We all have to do this thing together to try to win games. But absolutely, there can be tension. I don't know if Detroit's offense is good enough yet. I know they're scoring a bunch of points. I don't know if those guys are – this isn't Mahomes. This isn't like the Chiefs or Bills offense, where I think it's a little premature for the Detroit guys on offense to get mad at the Detroit defense. But maybe if it continues, yeah.
Thank you, buddy. Safe travels this week.
Always. Thank you, Dan.
That's Ross Tucker, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, joining us on behalf of DraftKings. He'll be on the call Bengals-Ravens next Sunday night. That will be on radio on Westwood One.